interact.
So your eyes are affecting it.
It looks that much. Yeah.
This morning, Lisa and I were up, and birds like that have what's called a flock call, and they want to know where you are. And so they do a real high pitch, just like a wee, and she's doing it to see where we are. And so when she did that, I went in and I said, "Hey, I'm right here." She settled down. She was happy. She just wanted to know where we were. And I came and I got her out. I went and got her food, gave her water, you know.
I love you. It's just the energy would go for coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe. That when I go down, she was upset.
Yep.
She would um
You're part of her flock.
she would fly down from
Yeah.
her perch and walk into my room and hello, hello. And then after that, she wouldn't let me handle her. After I was gone
She's
for a
mad
while.
at you.
Oh yeah.
They're like little toddlers, no
Oh, yeah.
kidding. Yeah.
No, she didn't have her wings clipped either, so I
Yeah.
occasionally get I bombed.
Yeah, they're anywhere between about a 2 and a 5-year-old is their mental ability, and they will talk to you in socially. I don't know how to say it exactly. They'll say the right thing at the right time. They know what they're saying,
Yeah.
which is just it's wild. It blow your mind. So yeah, we didn't intend to go and bring her home on Thursday. I thought it was going to be a more drawn out process. We were going to have more time. When Lisa got back, we did all this, and the lady goes, "You want to take her now?" I'm like, "Well, don't short circuit." She says, "I don't think you're going to lie to me." And she says, "I trust you, and I know you know these birds. If you want to, you can take her home." And I'm like, "Really?"
That's all.
Okay. So we took her home.
Oh my gosh, you find it.
A friend of mine had a cockatoo that was a live capture.
Also, I like your hair like that.
Only Scott could handle her, and he had to have gloves on,
Yeah.
What?
and she was not going to touch it. And
Well, the bird is chicken for
she would be friendly to you
It
for the
just tastes
case.
good. If
Never
it's
let her out.
expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Unless it was just Scott home and
I can find a pheasant or something.
Why?
For me, well,
she broke his thumb.
Oh, yeah.
Tastes really good.
And
Cockatoos and macaws both have beak strength that is unbelievable.
yeah, well, cockatoos in particular, because of the shape of their beak, they're like 3,000 pounds per square inch.
Hot.
5 to 7 for some of the bigger macaws.
Willow,
Jerked back and
the first mascot.
took her to the vet because he had a little sure she was okay. And
Take down the
Yeah.
first.
he's got a broken thumb, and the vet said, "Well, so she really cares."
Should have a big bow
I have a
and
broken
bucket.
thumb. She's like,
You jumping up on everybody, knocking chairs out of the way.
Anyway, so we're here. We're going to talk about conflict resolution. I imagine we'll have a lot more fun with this in the second class, but Danny and Evelyn coming back?
Sometimes.
I hope so. Anyway,
I would have thought they were here this morning because they left.
so
They left. They left for Montana like the day after I got back from. They've been there. They should be like they're just they may be coming back right now.
anyway, so I was putting this together. I thought your stuff was already in there, and I'm going and I got all my stuff, but I'm like looking at it, I'm like, it's blank. Okay.
I wrote the wrong one.
So
I was last week.
yes. Anyway, so we're going to talk about conflict resolution this morning, and this doesn't necessarily have to be just about marriage, although it's focused on that. It's focused on relationships. So, Austin, would you open us up in prayer, please, sir? Go ahead.
Dear Father, we pray in birthday then. I pray that everyone down here will know about you. Pray forgive us for our sins. Bless our time here. And be very to you then. Anyway.
"That's a true person." Yeah, it's 100 miles an hour, and
That is true, absolutely. So we're going to talk about conflict resolution types. Men and women are different. Remember when we talked about communication, men and women communicate differently. We've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So if you were to surmise, think about, wonder, maybe you think you know what a conflict resolution type is for men and for women. Let's start with men. What do you think they are?
you have to remember the waffle and spaghetti thing.
Yeah.
men compartmentalize, so they don't always take things personal. Well, that was over here. That's not relevant here. That's not always true, especially in today's environment. Everybody's offended about everything, but relational person, not necessarily just women, but a relational person attaches that event to the relationship. And it's
Yep.
part of it.
But in conflict, and we're talking about resolution, what do men do typically?
Fix it.
What's that?
Fix it. Attempt
We could say that.
attempt to
Yeah.
fix it.
Well, I would like a disclaimer that you and I haven't discussed this so that nothing that I say is indicative of where you're going with this. But I think my experience, at least one possibility is men react out of pride and women react out of protection.
I would agree with that. None of these are wrong. And they do fall into what we're going to talk about in just a moment. But if you have a conflict, how are you going to deal with it as a man? Now, and fix it as pride, yeah, because pride, you're like, what are you talking to me like that for? But there's 3 ways that I've got written down. I'm hoping somebody will hit one of them. But
Men tend to, let's say, defensive, but I think like a lot of men that I've dealt with conflict, they want to get aggressive.
okay,
There's
how about this?
certain.
They assert their dominance.
Look at you getting a better word.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got written down here. It took me a little while last night thinking about it. I gone through it, looking at everything, writing everything down. That's one of the things. And understanding too, I have a background in conflict resolution, some other things like that. So a lot of fun. But I do know how to work with people. And so men tend to do things one way, women tend to do things another. So how do they protect themselves?
Finding the approach.
That's one way.
You might not be so quick to make the point if somebody's being overly aggressive and you need to calm them down to just not say anything. I know what Jenny does with me is if I'm really, she doesn't say anything because
Okay.
I was an adjuster for 22 years. Whatever you say, I can and will use against you before bed.
Yeah.
But sometimes even after that. But
What's another way?
submission.
How do you deal with stuff?
First,
No, submit though.
Don't submit? Okay. Well, what do you do if you don't submit? You might be the first one to get one of the word.
Oh gosh. I don't know.
Seems to me that
Okay, I know I'm putting you on the
No,
spot.
well, I've been trying to think this whole time.
I think like men tend to externalize and women tend to internalize.
You.
Yes.
But some women do this, and I'm going to use a different word than what you said.
Oh yeah, that's me.
Challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's one of our words. And that is something that goes on. So talking about conflict resolution, men tend to do one of 3 things. There's a whole lot of other things that can fall outside of this, but one of 3 things is what we tend to do. Men tend to either give up or give in. Okay. Yeah.
Because like the
Give up or give in because they're like, I don't want to fight.
no,
I'm just tired of it, or I don't want to have to sleep on the couch. I want to go outside. Or they, yeah,
just learn. Not everything needs
that's
to
true.
fight.
By the way,
Yeah.
I did that.
run away or sweep it under the rug. Now that's okay.
You ever heard the
You give up.
Nietzsche still working with any next level. But have you ever heard like the sleeping tiger?
Yeah.
Type of deal? And I see that a lot because my wife's like that. I have to be very gentle with my wife, and my go-to is not gentle. My go-to is I'm gonna rip you a new one and establish dominance. That's my
Assert, gain control, get my way.
and I have to Like when Paul says to take your mind captive, the first thing I think
Yeah.
about is that when I'm in conflict, like I'm gonna rip your head off. And I've had to learn to calm that down. So I watch my wife and her sisters, and it's like when you go to an event, it's like 4 or 5 sleeping tigers. Like you know what they're capable of. So you treat them like you would a tiger. You keep your distance, you watch what you say, and you only become assertive when you're able to show dominance to that tiger that the tiger will submit. I don't think this probably sounds stupid.
Yeah, if I ever call a woman Karen, you know I've had enough.
Oh, wow.
It's probably not a good thing to do, but
My thing is, I don't see men always fixing it. I see women trying to fix it, not the men.
okay.
Yeah. See, I think like
And I don't argue with, I don't disagree.
as my sister in Christ, I see you and my wife a lot. Like I see many similarities, and I think maybe that's why you and I seem to have always gotten along because I'm very trained in that deal. My wife wants to fix everything, and I have to be the gentle, patient, like
Well, and really, the men have to fix it when there's an issue, not
Well,
necessarily
exactly.
an argument.
You have a problem you need me to fix, then I'll fix it. But men don't typically start with this in relationship or conflict.
Where you see the first two up there for men is aversion.
Yeah.
They're just trying to avoid the conflict.
Yeah.
Don't care. Women need the resolution
Why?
because maintaining a relationship.
There you go. Women are more relational than men. They just are. It's a natural thing for a woman to want to maintain the relationship. And so she wants to fix it. And sometimes she'll do it this way.
Hmm.
My wife, for the longest time, and I love my wife. We've dealt with this. We've worked through it, which is good. But she would manipulate. Some women will hide the facts. And to me, that's lying. Don't hide the facts. Don't manipulate. Sometimes they're challenged because, hey, I know better than you do. I've been in the middle of this. I've had your kids all day. I know what's going on. So challenge. I know better. Or they get beat down to the point where they're just done and tired of it. And they'll tell you, do whatever he says because it's just
There's
easier.
one of another.
Yeah.
There are times, especially I think with getting to the flip side of the man one where they just forget it. The misses that won't leave it alone. And
Yeah.
in my relationship,
Well-
it's the opposite. I'm the one that would leave it alone. Jenny would rather sweep it under the rug.
But that's because of this. That's a woman's way of dealing with the issues. And that's why they will keep bringing it up. Men, we've killed it. We've drug it out of the building. We're done. No more to talk about. Women, on the other hand, there's a relational portion of that. They want to make sure this has been dealt with, but I want to make sure I don't have to deal with it again, or I'm still dealing with it and I've got to process my emotions again another time. And so they keep doing this until finally they can let go and move on. But it just takes time because their personalities are different from ours. Women are different from men, and don't forget that. And that's a hard thing to remember sometimes.
And it's not okay to say in our current secular society.
That's true. I've been reading articles for the past couple of weeks about women who have given up on relationship because there are no men out there. And I'm like, they are. But the attitudes,
They haven't showed up at my door yet.
the attitude of the attitude of the men and the attitude of the women have pushed each other away.
may I share a conversation you and I had about your experience with men at this church? Like, I almost so. Berta and I had this conversation probably 2 years ago, and she shared with me that there's men at this church that have challenged her view of men because we act differently. Is that fair to say?
Well, that's good.
And I love this church for that. You brought that to me. Like personally, you Michael, Milo, and those guys, that we're actually emulating Christ, in that,
Yeah.
like not perfectly, but
Yeah.
we're making a difference.
Well, and I'm going to tell you one of my imperfect things that I did last night, and it wasn't on purpose. It was just something I did. And we go through things. Men who are first of all in tune with Christ, who are paying attention to what God wants us to do, will treat their wives with respect and with love. And they're help me. We're on equal footing. Well, why? Sometimes she's out of tune. Sometimes I'm out of tune. I'm not perfect. Last night, we were on a walk. We go on about a 3.5, 4 mile walk most nights, not every night. Last night, she was walking across the road and there was a guy coming on the other side. And I said, Lisa, Lisa, Lisa. And she jumped. And when she did, she just gave me this glare. It was a death glare. I was going to make it. That guy was going slow. It was fine. But I startled her. And my startle triggered the anger thing. I didn't do it on purpose. In my mind, I'm saving her life, right? In her mind, it's a different thing. And so it's a conflict. And so what did I do to resolve the conflict? What do you think I did? I apologize. I'm sorry, honey. I thought you were going to walk out into that car, and I wanted you to be safe because I love you so much. I don't want you to be a bug on the windshield. She calmed down. It was okay. But it wasn't something I did maliciously.
And bring up a great point. And I mean, here we are in this marriage class, which is, frankly, it's a marriage class, but to your point, it's a relationship class. And everybody I've seen this, like exactly your deal go. Like Sherry is my calming influence, even though my wife is much more aggressive than I am. Like when I get in that mode, like it's not good. I resisted martial arts for years because I didn't want to get more aggressive. But Sherry's usually the one, like she'll like put her hand on me or something like that, and I'll come down because like I'll take on anybody to protect my wife, and it's like.
Yeah, if there's a difficult situation going on somewhere, I'm talking to somewhere and it started to get a little bit heated, and you see her walk up behind me and put her hand on my back. That's just like what you're saying. So we're different. Men and women do different things.
Less subtle. My wife has to get in front of me and say, walk away.
Yeah.
Because the little hand on the back is just going to.
I get the hand on the back, but again, I don't have some of the challenges maybe you do.
Yeah.
And it's different.
Yeah. If I say to someone, I don't always do subtle. Yeah. And Jenny will be like, ever, not at all.
Yeah.
A little.
So what do we do when we go and we get married? What is the first thing we say in our marriage vows? I promise to what?
To love and to cherish.
Love you.
That's not it. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. All right. So let me go over here to my notes because that's where I'm missing. So I promise to have and to hold. Al? Having to hold for better for worse. Love and to cherish comes at the end. I have to have and to hold for better for worse, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poor. In other words, no matter what, I promise to what? Love, cherish, and if you're a woman and you had old style vows, obey. Okay, so love, cherish, and I put in here sometimes obey. So, but for how long? As long as you both shall live. So that's a big deal, right?
It's interesting as you were to the vows. That sounds remarkably like Paul talking about contentment.
Yeah.
Be content in whatever.
Because I've learned to be content whether I have much or I have little, whether I'm comfortable or I'm uncomfortable, whether there's good things or bad things. Paul tells us that. He doesn't say in those words, that's Corey's transliteration. But that's what he's saying. And in marriage, sometimes we have better. Sometimes it's all peachy keen. It's great, right? Everybody's happy. The birds are singing. The sun is out. There's a rainbow in the sky. It's great, right? What happens when it's not? And this is the thing that troubles me because I see this in so many relationships today. It's all great, rainbows and raisins and birds and all of this kind of stuff until it's not. And then what do we do? Just bear with me. Work with me. Work with me. Until it's not. And then what? I want a divorce. I don't love you anymore. I would say you probably didn't love me to begin with, if that's the case. Because whenever you say these vows, this is supposed to be a covenant, right? A triangle. God at the top, man and woman at the bottom. And hopefully it's a balanced triangle so that the man and woman are in tune with God and they're doing the right thing, but they're not always. But I promise to have and to hold. I'm going to have you. I'm going to hold you. I'm going to love you no matter what, for better or for worse. And listen, my wife, every major body system that you can remove and still live, it's gone. It's taken out. And so we've had some rough times. So for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, she's been very, very sick for a long time. Before we got married, I thought I was going to die. I got salmonella food poisoning bad. In fact, they sent a Catholic priest up to read me my last rites.
What are your last rites?
Read your last rites before you die. Basically say you're going to be okay so you get to go to heaven. That's the Catholic way of doing things. So in sickness and health, for richer or for poorer, I have been to the point where we had one can of green beans on the counter and we didn't have nothing to feed the kids and no diapers in the pantry. And we had little ones. So we've seen both sides of that. Now I haven't been fabulously wealthy, but here's what I do. I do love her, I cherish her, and I am going to not necessarily obey her, but we're going to work together on this. And I'm not going to force her to be my servant. Just not. These boys were supposed to go to Teresa's this afternoon. Well, they were supposed to leave after church. Guess where they're going when we get done here? They're going back home because they got to clean their rooms.
Yes, that's good.
Why? Not because their rooms are just dirty, but because I love and cherish my wife, and I know she's not going to be happy if I let them get away with it. So all of these things are important because I've made a promise, a covenant with God between my wife and I and God to do these things. And so it's a big deal. And so I am interested in conflict resolution because of that. Because if we live in continuous conflict, how healthy is that? It's not. It's painful. So, moving on. Here's the deal that we often don't do when we're talking about dealing with conflicts. And this is something that we should do. Whenever the first rule in mind, and if you're writing notes, this is the thing to write down. Stick to the problem at hand. Don't go elephant safari hunting. What do I mean by that?
It's not time to bring up every criticism.
Exactly. You can't be an elephant. And I have to remember that. I'm not particularly bad at that. But I will tell you this. The first few years of our marriage, my wife reminded me of everything that I did. And by the grace of God, and I literally mean that, we were able to work through that. And so now we stick to the problem at hand when we discuss stuff. So focus on the current conflict and don't accuse your spouse of always or never. You always do this or you never do this. You ever heard that? Yeah.
Do that.
I'm the one that usually.
In your room.
This should be conflict creation technique.
I'm telling you that. So focus on the problem. Here is my problem. I've asked you this several times, and we haven't been able to come to a fix in this situation. Would you please help me to deal with whatever that problem is and stick to just that problem? Don't bring up the past. Don't bring up other habits. Don't other things. So that's one of the things. If you put your spouse or your friend or your brother or your sister on the defensive, what happens? It goes downhill fast. They come out swinging. Absolutely. Get on the same side of the fence. You're supposed to be partners, right? Work together on this. And you can do this with your kids, not just your spouse. You can do this with a boyfriend, girlfriend, kids, hopefully pets, but pets don't listen very well, right? So rather than attempting to resolve the issue my way, okay, get on the same side of the fence or your way, work towards a solution that represents the way. Anybody here watch The Mandalorian? This is the way. Figure out what it is the way for both of you together to work towards that. Hey, boys, I need you to listen and stop making so much noise over there, please. So get on the same side of the fence. It's important to do. And often we don't do that. Here's another thing that we often don't do. Try to identify the core issue. What's really the problem? Is it really that you left your socks on the floor for the 15th time, or is there some other underlying issue? Really? What is the real problem? So arguments that come up because of adventure issues, you left your socks out again, really disguise the real problem?
I don't feel good and I'm a little dusty today. Had a bad day at work, or I just, you know, I had a boss that told me once when I was in claims, I got a very adversarial phone call. He walked over to my desk. He said, "Go for a walk." So I got stuff to do. I don't have time to go for a walk. He's like, "I guarantee you, your next phone call is not going to be any better than that one." And I remembered that, and I remember it a lot better now. But
I have 3 rules that go along with what you said. My 3 rules for conflict are I never address conflict when I'm tired. If I am tired enough that I need to go take a nap or I'm just worn out, it's not the time to resolve conflict. If I'm hungry, if I'm really hungry, famished, my attitude is not the way it should be. I get hangry. It's not the time to resolve conflict. So if I'm tired, if I'm hungry, and the final one probably makes more sense than all the rest of them, if I'm angry. If I am angry to the point that I cannot be rational, it is not the time to resolve conflict.
that if you're slightly
Yeah.
escalated,
Yeah.
just a little bit is enough to kick it up.
So
Just you, Michael. No, I'm just kidding.
what kind of attitudes or beliefs are motivating your behavior? And if you start to look at that, you'll get an idea of what the real issue is, and then you can address it. We were going into Walmart last night, and my daughter was just kind of, rah, rah, rah. I said, "Are you okay?" "I'm hungry." I said, "Oh, okay, I get it." And I told her, I said, "That's one of the things I don't do is resolve issues when I'm angry." I said, "Let's get you something to eat."
Here's a Snickers.
Amazingly better. Yeah, it's kind of like the Snickers commercial. Eat the Snickers, you'll feel better. So moving on. Anybody here ever pass mind reading school? You did?
Raise his hand.
What about you, Tom? Did you pass the course? I failed it miserably. Don't be a mind reader. Oh, I know what's going on with you. It's that time. No, stop.
Oh, that's never the excuse.
No.
That is never that's even if it is, it's not.
And don't try to discuss what the voices in the back of your head are saying, because you may have an internal dialogue and you may have had this conversation with Alana in your head, and then you think you've had that conversation with her directly. How does that work? It doesn't work well at all, does it?
A lot, actually.
Yeah.
Know that you had the conversation. Your attitude is at the end of that conversation.
Yeah.
Theirs is at the beginning. I
Right.
don't know that you've had.
So when you're doing that, when you're having that, don't be a mind reader. Discuss what's going on in your head. What did I expect? What am I looking for? What is going on? I've had to take some time and take my boys out and say, okay, here's what I'm expecting when I'm looking for example, when you clean the yard up. I want all of this stuff around the bottom of the pool base cleaned up. All I should see in here is rock or dirt. When I go out there, there's no little pieces of poop laying about on the false grass out there. You cleaned it all up. When I say clean under the bush, I mean clean under the bush. Get all the leaves out from under it. And so, guess what I get whenever I go through and I explain that better? Get a better result. And so, don't go in thinking that they know everything that you know. And so I do that with my boys. Whenever I talk to my wife, she'll say, well, what were you looking for? Well, in my mind, I was thinking blah, blah. And there's the problem. It was in my mind. I didn't come out of my mouth. And so ask direct questions. And so when you do that, don't expect your spouse, your friend, your child, your grandchild to know what you're thinking. That's a disaster recipe brewing right there. So don't be a mind reader. Here's another one that ought to make sense, and it's actually biblical.
That depends on the personality types on how hard that is to do.
Yeah.
I will be up all night stewing in it,
Yeah.
thinking and rethinking
Yep.
and making it way worse than it actually is. Jenny needs a break. I need a break from this conflict, sleep like a rock, and it's not because she's comfortable, she's shut down.
And that was where we're going to go. Settling disputes is kind of tough. It may take a mutual agreement to set it aside, get some sleep, come back to it again in the morning. But don't let the sun go down on your anger. Be angry, don't sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. That is really cute clue, because when you do, you give opportunity to the devil. Go ahead.
My stepmother didn't understand, and she hated it when my dad and I would have this fight.
Yeah.
And then, we'd be da-da-da and walk away like nothing happened. She goes, I hate it when you do that. You discussed it, we're done.
We're done. Yeah, we move on. So here's another thing. Don't let the anger go down on or don't let the sun go down on your anger. The anger go down on your sun. It works both ways, right? Here's another one. Don't go ripping into somebody and tearing them apart because of the faults that you think you see in. Don't be a character assassin. That's not good.
If you do that, you're creating permanent problems because of a temporary situation.
Yeah. It's okay to talk about the circumstances. It's okay to talk about the direct problem, but whenever you start attacking your spouses, your friends, your child's personality because of things, and I'm guilty, especially with my kids, you're not helping. It's not making it better.
It may not even be relevant. You shouldn't do it anyway, but it may not be relevant. You don't know what's in there.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes reframing it is helpful internally and externally. Like I notice, and I bring it up a lot. Like in New Mexico, being a contractor, it's not the easiest thing I've ever done, and it's not because of anything I've done. It's an assumption or a character that somebody assumed. So the last three contractors ripped them off. Therefore, I'm going to rip them off. So that's their mindset. And reassuring them and then walking that makes a lot of difference. But I have to capture my mind on a regular basis and say, okay, what's the root of this, right? What's the okay, well, this person probably, and honestly, sometimes if I break their stream of thought and I'll say, did you get burned by a contractor in the past or something? Oh yeah, and then they'll start telling me about that. And then when I reassure them, hey, I'm aware of that's not who I'm different. Like I'm a different person, right? I'm not them. Or I think I shared last week, like with Sherry, a lot of times I have to say, honey, I'm not Floyd. Because I know I can see that's the mindset she's going. Now it's different when you have a deeper relationship with somebody than it is somebody you don't know where they're coming from.
Right. And I used to tell my wife, I'm not Charles. And Charles is her stepdad that beat her. So you've got those things going on. Avoid character assassination. One of the biggest things we have to do is to remember that your relationship with your spouse, your children, etc., far more important than winning an argument or being right.
It's not completely true, but Jeff Allen has a thing he does in his stand-up routine, talking about when he first got married. Like, my dad sat me down day of my wedding and said, son, whenever you have an argument with your wife, ask yourself two questions. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Yeah. There's some truth to that. you can be right and still be gracious. And we don't want to do that. We want to be puffed up, prideful, and I told you so. And if you married long enough, you realize that that's a great way to do it, especially if you're the one that's not usually right.
Can't stress this one enough. You read through 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter, right? At the end of it, Paul says something that is probably more poignant than anything else. Love keeps no record of wrongs. This is essential for both parties above all else. And there's more reason for that than just because it's the right thing to do. And we'll talk about that as we keep going. So love keeps no record of wrong. Be quick to forgive, quick to admit your own mistakes, and quick to move on.
Throw in the
Go ahead.
berry to me, when I first learned it, was a tremendous wake up call. I actually, I knew the Lord's Prayer from when I was a kid. We had
You're ahead of me. Hang on just a minute. We're getting there.
All right.
Doing that.
Hold up. So you need somebody to read.
No, okay, we can do that in just a minute. In fact, that's where I'm going next. But here's the other thing to remember. Nothing is unforgivable. Nothing. Well, he cheated on me. I'm sorry. Nothing is unforgivable. Well, he hit me when he was angry. I'm sorry. Maybe you need to remove yourself from the situation, but it does not make it okay for the other stuff. Nothing is unforgivable. And I have seen people that were abusive, drinkers, drunks, smokers, cursers. I have seen people transform from the most despicable human being on the earth to one of the kindest, most loving, most gracious people I've ever met. My uncle was one of them. I would have never imagined the type of person, because I didn't meet him until after it happened. But once he met Jesus, wow. My aunt was telling me the story about it. My mother had told me the story about it. He was a different person completely. Nothing is unforgivable. On the other hand, maybe it's the woman who is the despicable human being. It happens, right?
I know a couple like that.
So
There was some infidelity on her part, and by getting closer to God, they were able to get back closer together. And
So here's where we're going with this, and we're going to continue talking about forgiveness because it's important. When the disciples, I say we, I wasn't part of the disciples, but I'm a disciple. When the disciples went to Jesus and they said, how do we pray? Can you teach us how to pray? And he says, okay, we'll pray like this. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. What does that mean? Hallowed. It's holy. You're special. It's above all. All right, your kingdom come. Whose kingdom? God's kingdom, right? Your will be done. Whose will? God's will. On earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Give me what I need. Don't give me what I want. Give me what I need. And forgive us our debts as we have what? Forgiven. Forgive us as we have been forgiven. That's key. Well, what does that say?
well, that's in the next verse. Yeah. Well, I was thinking of verses, but
There's another one. You forgive as you are forgiven. And I got another verse in here. It's in Ephesians.
well, I was thinking a couple of verses after that. It says flat out
Go ahead.
in verse 14, for if you forgive others of
There
their
you go.
trespasses. I'm a trespass guy, sorry.
Yep. And that's okay.
Biases.
King James. I get it.
That was an argument at our wedding.
Yeah.
For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, then neither will your Father forgive you.
What does that mean? Forgiveness is conditional and mandatory. It's conditional and mandatory. If you're a believer, you don't have a choice.
unforgiven of me for stuff.
Oh, way more, way more. So that means who? Who do you forgive? Spouse and anyone else. Doesn't matter who it is. Now, you say, well, Corey, that was just a really toxic situation. I've forgiven the person, but does that mean I have to go back and hang out with them and be around them? No. Forgiveness is not conditional on the other situation and being able to go back in a situation. Let me phrase it this way.
Forgiving, not to be nitpicky, but that's conditional. I mean, I agree. If a acquaintance or a friend and do I need to go back to that? But if it's your spouse,
That's different. Yeah. You've made a covenant with your spouse. But that also takes two sides, doesn't it? I'm not saying you do as much as you can as well as you can to reestablish that relationship to keep it going. But I'm talking about relationships outside of, for example, I have two sisters that I don't have anything to do with. I'm not angry with them anymore. I have forgiven them. But let me ask you this. If you go out somewhere and you find a hole in the ground and you stick your hand in there and you get bit by a spider, a snake, or something and it's venomous, are you going to stick your hand in there again?
No.
Why?
Culture.
Why wouldn't you? Because you're going to get bit again.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that you can't go out and make up. What I'm saying is, if the behavior that has caused the problem to make you bitter and angry has not been resolved, it continues. You're at fault. You're going to be blamed no matter what you do. You absolutely must forgive. But nothing says you have to keep playing with the snakes or the spiders or whatever else it is.
You just have to make that line because
Yes.
you can very easily
Yeah.
slip into
Yep.
that and say, well,
Yep.
I'm not forgiving because they're not repenting.
Right.
That's
You can
not
do that.
your problem. That's
Exactly.
between them and God.
Yep. How did I?
My
Go ahead.
boyfriend in the past,
Yeah.
when I was telling him that it took me a while to forgive him. It was also creating other issues with
Yeah.
other relationships, and then I wrote a letter to him saying, you know, I forgive you for all the stupid things, right?
We're going to talk about that in just a
And
minute.
he says, okay, what are you gonna do with it? And I'm like, I'm not sending it.
Yeah.
And so I ripped it up, what I had to do, and that's when I started noticing changes in other people.
In psychology, it's called the empty chair technique. It's whether it's writing a letter, talking to an empty chair, whatever it is, it's a way to resolve that issue in your mind so you can forgive and you can move on. Because you got to let it go. And that's important. So consequences of unforgiveness it can lead to spiritual consequences, right? It can destroy your relationship with you and God. It can destroy your relationship with you and others. The idea is that we're to model God's forgiveness. Why? It's a divine command. That's number one. There's transformative power in that by forgiving. Looking at Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 32, it says, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as what? As Christ forgave you. So we have to model God's forgiveness because it's
the opposite of that transformative power is the verse in Hebrews that says don't it's the bitter root verse. I can't think of exactly how it goes.
Don't let the bitter root take hold. Yeah. So it's transformative power. The consequences of forgiveness, and we talked about that, is issues with that. Modeling God's forgiveness, we forgive because God forgave us. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God and Christ forgave you, because it promotes healing. You ever suffer from depression?
No.
What do you think's the root of that? What is the root of that? Unresolved conflict, lack of forgiveness, things like that. It's all of that can destroy your mental health. So forgiveness promotes healing because you're letting go of those things that are negative in your life that you've just dwelled on, you thought about. I have to be careful about not obsessing over things that are happening at work. And I have to remember, I'm just the manager. At the end of the day, if something happens to me, they'll replace me and he'll have to deal with it or she'll have to deal with it. So it's not the end of the world. And if people don't want to comply, I have to hold the line as the manager. I have to follow company policy, but it's not personal. I'm not there to attack them because I don't like them. I'm there to push them into following company policy because that's my job. And so I have to let go of the stuff because otherwise I would get bitter and angry and not want to be there and I wouldn't do my job. And there are a lot of managers that get to that point. There are a lot of relationships, husband and wife, that get to that point versus knowing God and doing what God tells us to do, namely forgiving, letting go. And it happens on both sides. It's not just one side. Then there's unresolved bitterness. The bitterness has taken hold. You've got all of the things going on in your life, and neither one of you can approach the throne of God. Neither one of you can heal because you hadn't let it go.
Unforgiveness described as drinking poison and expecting somebody else to get sick.
Yeah.
Testing 1 2.
I like that one.
Testing 1 2 1 2.
Forgiveness fosters or moves us
Testing
towards
1 2.
healing, reconciliation, both personally and within our communities. Now, what does Paul say about how we should reconcile? We should keep the peace as much as it is up to us. That's what Paul says he does, or he did at the time. Now, going back to what you said, one of the things that you can do, and I did this for my mom because my mom, late stages of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, she was not able to talk on the phone and she couldn't type because she couldn't control her hands as well as she needed to. And so because we couldn't communicate directly, now to be clear, I did everything I could to resolve our conflicts. I asked for forgiveness. I wanted to talk to her. I begged her for opportunities to do things. And I was met with resistance at every place because my sisters wouldn't help me. And so instead of being angry and bitter and upset about that, I had to go back and pray about it. And I wrote a long letter. I love you dearly. You're my mom. I care about everything that has gone on in our lives. And I know that our relationship most likely will not be resolved 100% here on this earth. But I want you to know I love you, I care, and I forgive you for the hurt and all of the other stuff. Do you know what kind of peace I had versus what I would have had if I'd let that go before her death? I'm at peace with that. You've heard me say when I've preached a sermon, one day we're going to stand in the presence of Jesus and all that stuff is going to be gone. It's going to be healed. It's going to be perfect. And we're going to have the perfect relationship.
1 2.
That's what I look forward to. One day, provided my sisters know Jesus, and I think they do, one day our relationship is going to be restored. It's going to be perfect. And so what can I do here to promote healing for me so that I can function better for my kids and for my wife? I have to forgive. And I have to let it go.
Yeah.
And
Michael,
so
how are you?
conflict resolution is important.
Testing 1 2.
But you've also got to forgive. Questions, thoughts?
Oh, is he really? Good for him. Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4. Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2.
You know, my thoughts have a lot more to do with you and I thinking about turning this into a series and those kind of things. And
testing 1 2 1 2 3 4.
There's a lot of stuff I could have done with eisegesis to pull verses out and throw. I wanted to support it with exegesis, not eisegesis.
That sounds pretty good.
Because I wanted to be to fool along.
Huh?
I actually made a note here.
Okay. Huh?
It just was reminding me of this whole deal. I use a storyline of a caveman,
Yeah.
and I'll say that I truly believe this, that God created us one way. I mean, He hasn't changed that. I mean, it's more transformed to honor times, but man in his truest sense is made to be a hunter.
Yep.
Right. And that means they leave the village daily to go out to hunt to provide. That's their role. They need to be the provider. They need to do that. If you have a man that was engineered like a woman and he takes his first shot, he misses the deer, and he sits down and starts ruminating on it and whining about it and crying about it, there's no second shot.
Yeah.
So a man's geared to like kind of push that stuff aside and keep pushing on. Where a woman is much more geared to be in the village and manage the affairs at home.
Yep.
So if she doesn't ruminate on it, if she doesn't make things right quickly, if she doesn't spaghetti it, then the whole village falls apart. But woman is geared that way, and a man's geared this way. And if we get those two things in our head, conflict resolution. So a woman has to, my wife specifically needs to understand that my inner nature is to just get it, move on, and keep going. And my wife's inner nature is, no, we need to resolve this for the good of the village.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
There's got to be a balance, and that's why a woman is made the way she is, and why a man is made the way he is, and they're supposed to work as a team, and when they don't, falls apart. All right, let's pray and we'll close. Father, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for your words. Scripture that just kind of lays this all out for us and makes it clear. I pray that you'd help us to follow your principles, to do what you call us to. Help us to truly be the disciples we're called to be. Pray that you just build that burning desire within us, me included, Father. Just continue to stoke it to make it stronger. And help us to be the ones who go out and tell others about you. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. May I have one?
I get rid of them somehow.